Are Zillow leads worth it? Episode 39 of Mega Real Estate Talk. That's what we're diving into. Let's go.
You're listening to Mega Real Estate Talk with Jared Davis and Galen Parker, your source for an honest, insightful look into Central Virginia's real estate market. Combined, Jared and Galen have over 20 years sales experience, as well as hundreds of testimonials from clients past and present who rely on them for advice and assistance when buying and selling homes in today's incredibly hot and competitive real estate market. And now, your hosts, Jared Davis and Galen Parker.
I am Jared Davis.
And I am still Galen Parker.
And this is Mega Real Estate Talk. Galen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, relatively.
Why is that?
I mean, I was up last night just dying. I described it to my friend Jared early this morning as an alien tearing his way through my intestinal wall. That's how I felt this morning.
What did you eat yesterday?
You know, it's really bad. It was a salad. I think a salad got me.
Well, from where? Don't say Chicken Fiesta. Please don't do it.
Chicken Fiesta.
I ate there 4 times last week.
He'll go back.
Oh, I'm going back.
Yeah, because the tuna,
it's Chicken Fiesta. It's
the
amazing.
tuna sandwich.
The debacle of tuna at Subway.
Well, I had seen something a while back where somebody was saying like, I went to Chicken Fiesta and I saw them keeping like chickens outside.
I saw that too.
And it didn't stop me at all.
No, I was like, I don't care.
Because it's so good.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Like
The raw chicken,
the
not
raw
live
chicken's
ones.
outside.
But
They had
not,
them like stored, like not permanently stored, but they were sitting outside.
and I don't think they have a freezer
I
outside.
am not eating there anymore.
Yeah.
More for me.
I mean, I've been through the driveway a lot, at the drive-through like 4 times in the last week.
Yeah, I've gone
Never seen
probably
new
four,
chickens.
4 out of 7 times. But here's the thing.
They're always in the little
It could be
roasty.
anything, right? We had a sandwich at Mission Realty. I had a glass of wine at
From
work.
Jersey Mike, so we don't
Jersey
think
Mike.
Mission
So,
Realty gave them food poisoning.
Did you see my post on the sandwich or the
I did see that, and I was like, they both looked delicious to me.
what the crap?
He had a picture of like a sub that had been torn apart, and it was just like a salad sub. And I'm like, still looks pretty good.
It was like nicely rolled into that individually, and then I get mine and it's like shredded just meat.
So we both have great news, super exciting news, and we'll share it with our team at 3. But what's your great news, Jer Bear?
Well, the first, I mean,
TBK, talk to us.
I just got back from the Bahamas, so that was my first bit of news. I'm about as tan as a roll of toilet paper right now after a week in the Bahamas.
A used roll of toilet paper.
And a new roll of toilet paper. I mean, this is tan for me. If you saw the real white me,
Just flip your arm over. The other side. There you go.
no, this is even tanner than the actual me. It's really bad. I can't get color. I just go straight lobster. And you know, I spent a week in the Bahamas, and then I came back and I sat next to the pool at ACAC for like 3 hours, and my back got all burnt. I didn't burn it all in the Bahamas, and I burnt here because I didn't lotion.
You're a high elevation.
I didn't lotion my lower back because like the Jackie wasn't with me, and
Yeah.
I just like got everything I could, and I burnt like a crisp. I was like, it was. I guess the lotion works. My real good news is that we just listed the most expensive house in Chesterfield County.
Say something.
$2.1 million. I went back and looked 2 years and couldn't find any sales for more than $2 million
Talk to him.
in Chesterfield County. So
TBK.
that's pretty cool. It was in the news this morning. Richmond Biz Sense did an article on it. It's got its own island.
It's pretty cool.
We're selling islands out here, ladies and
We're
gentlemen.
selling islands
just know
in
that.
Chesterfield County.
The Davis Group selling islands.
That's right.
Very nice.
It's pretty good. I think we're going to go under contract by the time you listen to this podcast. It'll probably be sold. That would be the plan.
The
Very
location on it, though, you would never know it was there.
For sure.
No,
Like I've shot in that neighborhood all the time, and I was like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah, I had a couple neighbors and people driving by that was like, I didn't even know this was back here, and I just saw the signs, and so I was like, so obviously you're not going to buy this
How'd they see the signs?
because Galen is the man, and he put them out for me the day before.
Be the agent. Other agents want to help. The neighborhood is actually next to my neighborhood, so it's not like a long drive. I didn't feel like doing it, but I was like, I'm definitely going to help you out.
Saved me.
But it is really funny when you walk through the neighborhood. It's like nice neighborhood, and then you come down there. It's like they have like that big, nice like fence. You're like, what?
You know what you should do?
Compound is
Actually,
back
this is
here.
a good idea. The dealerships sometimes have this huge like rope that has like a balloon that's attached to it that says cars here.
like a for sale
$1
sign.
million home.
I feel like the HOA would probably
No HOA there.
No.
Oh, really?
No
Nice.
HOA for that.
And you're not FAAs. No, there's something that's attached, so you're fine.
Very cool. That's really fun.
Galen, what's your good news?
My good news is based off of my sphere just people I keep in contact with. I ratified $1.2 million in 16 hours.
Nice. Had a few deals. That's good in our market with averages.
Exactly.
Our average price point is like 300,000.
Yeah. So I was just running back to back. People were just calling, and it was like crazy stuff, like late night texts, like, "Hey, Galen, I need to hire a realtor. How do I hire you?" And I'm like, "You just did. What do you want?" And they're like, "Can you come out tomorrow morning and do a listing appointment for me?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And I went out there. We talked, and they're like, "Well, we're going to take our time and find a house." Literally the very next morning, she was like, "I found a house that we want. Can we go see it?" And I'm like, she was like, "We went to go see it." My client, the husband, he was like, "I'm flying out to Chicago in the morning, and I'm flying back tonight. Can we see it Tuesday?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And the listing agent was like, "I got an offer in." So I told my client, I'm like, "Hey, man, sorry." And he was just like, "Just offer him this." And I was like, you haven't like seen it. She's seen it. And he was like, "It's all good." And I'm like, "All right, it's all good for me too." I sent back like my like recommendations of like a good offer, and he was like, "That all works for me." And I like sent it. I'm like, the lender was like, "Here's your pre-approval. They're good for." They're like, "They don't need to sell their house to buy this. They're great." And I'm like,
I love it.
That's why it'd be nice to every person you meet.
I love it. I went through the numbers this morning. We've been having a really good quarter. I think these whole morning huddles are working out very well.
Very much so. And I got 2 listings that went active this morning.
Nice.
So
I love it.
I got a closing this week.
Killing it.
I live in the woods, man.
Killing it.
I'm outside.
All right. Are we deep diving? Are we ready for the deep dive? Let's get into the subject.
Are you ready for this?
Okay. Here it comes. Give me the drop. Yeah, if we could just always do music like this, because it gets me hyped for the deep dive. And now fade me out, Mike. Alrighty. Are Zillow leads worth it?
Yes. All right, next topic. Imagine that was the end. That was the end.
And credits.
What else are we talking about?
It's been another episode of Mega Real
Are
Estate
Zillow leads worth it? This is a great question because I know when we've brought agents onto our team, some of the things they said when they spoke to other real estate teams are like, well, this team, they've got Zillow leads, and those leads are amazing. So we're going to talk about just a little bit of the conversion rate of a Zillow lead versus maybe another lead. Is it really worth it? So I love this topic because it comes up a lot. It's very important. And if you're a realtor, you probably know that Zillow, in my opinion, this is my humble opinion, is not endorsed by the Davis Group or our EXP Realty at large. I feel like they're kind of predatorial towards real estate agents in a lot of ways. And so
Another subject. We're just getting into the.
But are these leads worth it?
Well, that's what we're going to break down today, right? So here's the things we have to think about. So one of the things we see is I just see on all of the mastermind pages and Facebook pages and people reaching out and questions and people that we've brought into EXP and we're helping them build their lines and their teams and everything like that. Everybody's looking for more leads almost always. Everybody wants, especially in this market, we need to do as much as we can to try to get in front of people. And that's one of the ones, I mean, let's face it, as much as people may like them or not like them, they are the number one search site out there.
Absolutely.
Right? So because of that, they charge a pretty hard premium. So the first thing you have to look at is what's your budget? Because I find that a lot of realtors will come in and they'll say, well, should I do Zillow leads? What should I do? And you ask them their budget and they say, well, I could spend $500 a month, right?
Okay.
And for a new agent, right, or an agent that is maybe solo, $500,000 a month, that's probably a pretty good budget for somebody, right? Like to be able to.
I think you just said $500,000.
No, 500 to 1,000, 500 to 1,000.
That's awesome,
right? No, like 500 to 1,000 is probably like a reasonable solo agent, new agent budget. There's a lot of new agents that don't have that, right? But here's the thing: how many leads is someone going to get spending $500 a month if they choose Zillow as their avenue?
Mm-hmm.
Answer the question.
I would say that's 1 to 2 lead, maybe 1.
1.
Because it's like, I know Zillow, which is interesting that people don't realize, they think they're paying for ads. You're actually paying for impressions. And like Zillow says, like you need like 5,000 impressions, but when you really break down, like 5,000 impressions is only like 1 to 2 leads. So it's not a lot.
Yeah, so the average Zillow lead, at least in our market, everything is different from market to market and zip code to zip code, because obviously as pricing goes up, then the lead pricing goes up. But we're typically being quoted anywhere from $400 to $500 per lead with Zillow. So the biggest thing to find out, I think, is really what is your budget first and foremost. Because if it's only $500 or $1,000, if you only had 2 leads coming in a month, imagine, do you think you're going to sell those 2 leads? Well, that, I mean, we're going to get into conversion in a minute too, but but you need a 50% conversion to get just one of those.
Yeah.
And chances are very good that that is not happening, right? So now you have to figure out, all right, maybe your budget is a few thousand a month. Maybe it's 5,000 a month. Well, 5,000 a month, you're still only talking 10 to 15 leads. So when you think about your cost per lead, you know that you're going to need thousands to be able to do that. So then you got to figure out, well, what's going to be your return on investment, right? So you got to think about how much is the house in your area, right? What's your average price point, either as an agent or even in general? Because if you're in LA, and I don't know what they charge in LA or San Fran or some of these bigger markets.
You know more. Yeah.
You would think it has to be.
They say it's more. Like even Zillow themselves say
if you're watching this on YouTube and you're in a different market, comment down and tell us how much
they costing you.
How much are your Zillow leads costing you and what market are you in? I'd like to know. If you're listening to it, well, too bad. Can't really do much. You could reach out to us, but
DM me.
You can DM us. If you're listening to it, you can find our contact info. But if you're actually watching this on YouTube or on Facebook or wherever you're at, tell us what your leads cost, because I would imagine, again, it's a sliding scale. If you were to go to somewhere like Petersburg in our market, where the average price is probably, in the single hundreds, right? Versus Henrico, where you're 400 or 500, you know what I mean? In Western Henrico, it does scale. So who knows? Maybe they're charging $1,000 plus for a lead out in something like LA or New York City.
That doesn't sound far off to me at all.
But you need to be able to figure out what your return on investment is and what you want to make, right? So if you're a new agent, a team agent, if you're building a team, if you're whatever you're doing, if you're the guy that's picking marketing, you probably figure this is how much I want to make for every dollar I spend.
Yeah.
And if you're listening and you're like, nah, I've never done that.
Do it. Start doing it. Yeah. I'm trying not to like run into like the conversion discussion, but it's just kind of like, if you're only getting 1 to 2 leads a month at this price, it's like, man, the odds are not in your favor.
And we can talk conversion. So, I mean, if you look at conversion percentages, right, what do you think Zillow conversion is? Any idea?
I would say 5%.
So I think you're about right. When you look at things, they will tell you that some could maybe hit like 10% conversion, maybe in like a great market and a perfect market. And places like Realtor.com will actually tell you the same thing, that they're about 5%. And their best agents are at about 9%. Zillow falls in line with that, not only from the numbers we've seen personally, but from talking to other teams, from talking to them. It really seems like you're about a 5 to a 10% conversion at best. So, at 5% conversion, right? I mean, you need 20 leads, right, to get a deal
at $500 a lead.
Yeah. So at $500 a lead, that's 10,000, right? Is that 10,000?
Yeah.
That's 10,000 bones. So then you got to ask yourself, what's your average commission? Right? So that's in a normal market, that's about a $325,000 house. So if you're doing this and you're spending $10,000 a month to make 20 leads to make 9, and then you still have to pay broker splits, or if you're in a scenario like I am, right? I'm the team leader. So for me, I'm giving away half of that income on those leads. So for the agent that's getting them, that's maybe not purchasing them, that's a part of our team, they're happy because great, they just made $5,000. But if I had to spend $10,000 to make 5, now I'm losing 5 so that he can make 5, right? So you really have to figure that out. Now that's a blanket scenario. Obviously, if it didn't work in markets, then people just wouldn't do it. So,
for sure.
So you have to figure out your numbers. What's the return you want? Most people would love to say they would like to make $5 for every one they spend. So if you're going to spend $10,000 a month on leads, you would hope that it's making you about $50,000. Now that's a pretty good ROI. If I could do 5 to 1, I'm spending that dollar every single month, and I'm going to keep increasing it and scaling however I can. But ask yourself, is it worth it for even a 2 to 1 return? If you were to spend $5,000 but you made $10,000 at the end of the month, is it worth it? Right? Maybe, but again, you're still breaking down, are you a team? Are you
I was gonna say, like, if
leads?
you're a solo, then maybe, but if you're like a team, you got other type of splits and obligations, then you might be like,
yeah, but then you got to throw in the new thing with Zillow, right? And that's Zillow Flex. So Zillow Flex may not be in your area yet, but from what we've seen, we feel like it's pretty much getting everywhere nowadays.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, Zillow Flex is essentially a referral-based payment with Zillow. So they're going to take, I believe it's 30 to 35% of the
correct,
deal.
sir.
But you pay them nothing. So me personally, I actually like programs like this because I know if we get nothing from it, it costs me nothing. I didn't lose anything. But the flip side is as we get closings and the better they do, we give up a pretty hefty referral fee. But, I mean, if you're an agent and an agent called you on the phone and said, do you want a free listing? I'll give it to you for 30%, right? What are you going to say? Well, most people are going to say yes, right?
Yeah.
So that's the way I look at it. And here's the issue, though, with Zillow Flex is you had to be spending at least $3,000 a month typically to get into Zillow Flex. And from what we've seen in our market, it was much higher. It was people that were spending $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a month with Zillow. Those were the people, the teams that were allowed to get into the Zillow Flex program, which then begs the issue that if you're paying $500 a lead, are you now competing with the guy that's doing Zillow Flex that's not paying anything for the lead?
Yeah.
But that's just paying the referral fee.
And I read recently that they're loosening that up a little bit as they start spreading it across the country. Obviously, they're in like big markets. But I was reading an article recently, and the guy was making the argument that technically Zillow Flex is more expensive than the person who's doing a Zillow Premier Agent. Premier Agent is basically what we were describing earlier. And I thought that was like pretty interesting when you break it down, because it's like with like that Flex, you're paying out like 35%, let's say, but you only get that one lead. Whereas if you've got like a $4,000 budget, maybe you get that one lead, but you also get your other 19 leads. Because I think one thing that I knew it, but it didn't really occur to me is that, like, we say 5%, but when you look at, they're saying 5% within 90 days.
Gotcha.
They're saying, but like, there's those other leads that like they might in 6 months, so you still have those coming in. You've already purchased them, you don't pay them. So like, as you get paid on those with like the Flex, it's like, well, you get that one lead and you're paying. So he's like, when you average out, let's say you close 4 more, but maybe in 6 months or 12 months, he was like, when you start dividing that per close cost, he was like, it's much lower. He was like, so you can be around like 14% back to Zillow versus the 35% referral for that one lead. And I was like, that makes sense to us, because like for us, we talk a lot about like remarketing. So it's like, maybe that lead doesn't close in 90 days, but we're marketing to them. They come back to us eventually, and we have this. So every month we've got 20, now 40, now 60. So we're building up this database. Whereas with the Flex, it's like you just got that one.
Gotcha.
So it is an interesting, situation to be in. But as you mentioned, you've got to be cranking out dough already just to, kind of get that, even get in the program.
Yeah, and I think, Zillow Flex, I think it's a great thing if you can get into it, if you're already killing it or trying to, or maybe it's new to your market. And the reason they essentially did Zillow Flex, from what I heard, essentially was the fact that any agent could come in and say, all right, I'll give you my $500 a month for my one lead. But the reality, Galen, is how many agents actually call their leads that they pay for?
Don't get me angry right now. So here's the thing. I was wondering, like, should we pause? I just got like a Realtor.com lead, so I'm like, should we pause so I can call them? But then I realized it's like $100,000 lot of land, and it's not. So
we'll wait. That's not important, people.
Right. But yeah, when you talk about like how many agents actually call their leads, not enough. And what I think you and I have learned over the last, let's say 24 months, is that even the agent that says, hey, you don't have to worry about me. I'm going to call my leads. I'm going to lock it down. No problem. Like that guy, he still falters at some point, not all the time, but it's not enough. You really need almost like an you almost need like an ISA will just like guarantee the call, and then proceed from that. But
so that's why they did Flex, though, because you had all these agents that could come in and buy leads, but then they weren't actually following up on leads, and then
Zillow hates that.
Well, they were actually getting, and again, Zillow doesn't make any money out of those leads that they just sold to you, but what it does reflect on Zillow is Zillow just gave me this realtor to try to inquire on the property, and now this person's not getting with me, so Zillow must not be a reliable place to try to get somebody to help me, right? So Zillow Flex is kind of fixing that for Zillow by saying, hey, if we're going to put you on Flex, we're putting you here because we know you guys are spending, converting, selling a lot of houses. So it's mostly teams that are doing hundreds and sometimes thousands of deals a year that are getting into Flex because they know that these teams have the operations, the bandwidth, the systems to close and follow up on these leads.
And it's kind of interesting with Zillow Flex, like you obviously have to be a premier agent. You have to use the Zillow CRM for the lead. You have to update it weekly. And then you also have to remit their payment to them within 15 days of the closing. Preferably, they wanted the same day as closing straight from the closing company or the title company. So it's like those are extra steps. Now, if you're already an agent, you're already a team that's performing well. Well, that's an easy thing for you. So that is not a big deal. But if you are one of those guys where you're just like, oh, I didn't update my lead, or I was going to, it's like you're going to be decimated and kicked out pretty quick.
Yep. 100%. And that's most of the referral-based services because we deal with many of them, and it's the same thing. You're always looking in, and they're always wanting you to update the back end, and if you don't, they turn your leads off, and they're...
I just had a thought. So I was like thinking, I wish we could update like our, like, jot that, hey, Wylopa, I know you're not watching, but if we could update our CRM and have it back fill into theirs, that would have been that'd be really cool.
It'd be great, but they have to work together, and there's issues with all of that. So, but speaking on that, right? So you've thought about what's my return on investment, what's my average cost for sale, what's my commission, how much am I looking to make, can I get into Flex, what's my budget? What about alternatives?
Yeah.
Right? Because at the end of the day, maybe you're saying, hey, my budget isn't $10,000 a month. Maybe it's, again, $500. Maybe it's $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. Even at $3,000, I'd say Zillow's a hard stretch.
I would agree.
To effectively buy enough leads, even if you're a solo agent.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's going to be 6 leads essentially for the month. That's barely one a week. So again, it may still be worth it. We're not saying it's not. But if you're sitting here saying my budget's only a couple grand, let's talk some alternatives.
Yeah. So you've got homes.com.
Yep.
You've got realtor.com. You've got, what I like is when you get kind of close to that Google PPC, Google LSA, and I really like for a budget if you're trying to if you're a grinder and you've got like the Facebook ads.
Yeah. So you mentioned Google PPC and Facebook. So typically, there's so many different ways to get ads out this way at this point, right? Like if you're not being bugged every day by HomeSnap, I would be surprised.
Savvy Card, HomeSnap, all these guys.
Yeah, so a lot of them will do it. With EXP, we have KV Core that's built in. So KV Core, if you're with EXP, they give you a free CRM. It's typically a few $100 a month if you're not with them, but they've got a core property.
Like 600, right?
Yeah, it's between 4 and 6, depending on what you get, what kind of features. But they do a core property boost, so you can essentially just plug in an MLS number, and it creates an ad. You can choose whether it's a for sale ad, an open house ad, a just sold ad, and it just links back to your CRM to generate leads. And then you just choose, hey, I want a $45 budget, a $60 budget, a $100 budget, whether it's 3 days, 5 days, a week, a month, whatever, right? And it's pretty simple. So there's a million ways to do it. We also use Sierra as our CRM, and we use another software called Wylopa that builds into that. That actually has a budget for social for us, but we can also create our own links on our Facebook pages and boost them out for leads. If you want to know how to do that, you're welcome to reach out to us. We have a bunch of partners that we've gotten into essentially how we're doing our marketing that way. So feel free.
I forgot listing to leads. I use listening to leads. That they'll do the same thing. You just put something in, and they'll create the ad for you.
Yes, if you want our systems, we're happy to talk to you about what we're doing and help you. You can reach out to us. I'm guessing, is all of our info at the bottom of the podcast at all? Mike, Oh, do I have to say my info all the time? I want to make sure people can actually reach out to us without me saying it. I know in YouTube it's pretty simple, but
no, Eddie adds your info on the.
But
the
if they're listening
on the video on the listening,
yeah. Well, if you're listening, you can email me at Jared Jared at centralvarealty.com or Galen's at Galen@centralvarealty.com. So if you want us to get you into our CRMs and our systems and all how that we can do that.
Help.
You'd mentioned homes.com. They're typically cheaper overall. I've noticed their leads are typically about $40 to $60, $70, at least in our market. So you think, hey, I could buy 10 leads for the cost of essentially one Zillow lead.
Yeah.
Realtor.com, we're actually doing those. What's interesting about Realtor.com is Realtor.com sells exclusive leads and shared leads. If you do a shared lead, they're typically anywhere from 25 to 30 on the really low end, up to about 120. And then if you do non-shared leads, they're typically getting up there, $200, $300 a lead. So you can start to almost get close to Zillow pricing as you start to get a little closer. I'm not saying you couldn't get a little more bang for your buck, but what we've noticed is that the Realtor.com conversion is supposed to be pretty much just as good as Zillow. So if you wanted to save a little bit, you should maybe look into Realtor.com. You can typically get on a wait list if your zip codes are taken, and they'll call you. They call me almost every week as zip codes rotate because I have so many in our wait list now. The thing to keep in mind is if you're doing a shared lead, speed to lead is everything because you're going to get the lead and somebody else is going to get the lead. So if you don't call your leads on time, by the time you get around to call them the next day, we've already converted them and sold them a house. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Are you doing shared leads or exclusive leads?
No, that's a good point.
What about outside of the internet?
Oh, well, then there's I just wanted, just before we just leave like the Facebook leads, I just think that that's a great opportunity, but don't fool yourself. It's still speed to lead, and it's going to be more leads. And yes, there's going to be people who are, maybe the quality is a little bit lower because the volume's higher. So just be mindful of that. But I'm a big fan of saying, the guy who's kicking the tire today he's driving off the lot tomorrow. So just keep that in mind. It's like, yeah, he might not be ready. Maybe he's just looking to rent, but a year from now, like, keep them in your CRM, keep working on them.
Yep.
I think that is just a very smart way, especially the way people use social media. It's like they might go to Zillow once a week, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, but I mean, they're checking social media every 2 or 3 times an hour.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. But there are other options outside of that. I'm obviously a big proponent of open houses. I've got one this weekend. I've got another listing that I think I'm probably going to have another agent do. Those are great ways to get your own leads. That costs you elbow grease, right? Maybe the one-time sign that you purchase from, your local real estate brokerage office or wherever you get that from. So that's also a really good one.
So, and then you got old school, right? You got print advertising still. I mean, I had asked a while back, it was like a year ago now, I had asked like my Facebook groups and agents, like, how do you think those homes and land books are doing nowadays? Because they used to put them in brokerages for one.
Yeah.
And you're like, everybody stopped going to brokerages through COVID for the most part, right? That's why we love EXP. We still have an office, but it's all cloud-based. We don't have to go in to see people. But then the flip side of that is like houses are also selling in 2 days.
Yeah.
It's like by the time you meet a print deadline.
Write it out.
Yeah, you're like, let me get in the May issue when it's, April. You're like, the house. Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know how those are doing, but people like to do flyers in neighborhoods. I mean, there's an agent that sends a flyer to my neighborhood every single month religiously.
And he's getting business.
Curtain a guard. Yeah, and he sells in there. It's obviously working, but it's a long burn. It's something that, typically you're waiting for them to call you. Some internet leads are a long burn, and you're constantly calling them to try to convert. This is one of those things that you're not calling anybody. You're waiting for them to call you, but typically it's a very long burn. They've got to see you for years before they typically will start converting. And if you're selling in the neighborhood, it helps because you get a sign in the neighborhood. You get some flyers in the neighborhood.
I like print to farm out not just an area, but just like maybe even where you live. Like, somewhere where you're going to be all the time, where you're interacting with people. So it's like they see you at the local restaurant, they see you on like the local page message board, they see you like making stuff, and then also, hey, what is this? I get an email, or I get a flyer in the mail from them every month. So it's like I do like it for that. Radio, if you've got a voice like Jared and I, is an awesome opportunity for you, but let's not fool ourselves. Radio is, other than television, it is the most
Zillow.
expensive. And Zillow.
And here's the thing, though.
Here comes a radio voice.
No, I'm saying podcast wise trumps that, and it doesn't even cost anything.
Well, the thing with podcasting is they've obviously have to find us, and there's algorithms, and it's a long burn as well. Radio, what you're hoping, it's still a repetitive thing, but you're hoping, hey, if I'm blasting people on their way to work every morning or on their way home or whatever, you know, there's definitely something to be said for radio ads, but like Galen said, they're very expensive. So again, if you say, well, I have a $500 budget a month or $1,000 budget a month, that's not going to buy you anything. Most of the time, you're going to need $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 to really get.
You're in that 15.
Yeah, to really get the saturation you need.
Time slot too.
Exactly. Yeah, and then it's time slots. There's so much to it, right? So that's the one thing you have to think about with radio and stuff like that. And again, if you have that budget, then you can start to weigh.
Got a radio voice, but not a radio budget.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a very cool, and you also have to. You should really talk to someone. Obviously, you know this if you even considering radio, but you talk to someone who knows about that whole business, because certain stations do better than other stations. Some stations are not conducive. All times are not conducive. You need someone who's going to be able to guide you through that, because if you just go to like the radio advertiser, he's like, yeah, they're all great. Everything's great. Yeah, Media One, just buy it all here. So make sure you kind of get like a consult with that, because you could end up spending a lot of money and then never see anything if you don't run it for 6 months straight, and then you on that month 8, then you get a phone call. So
what's your thought, now that we've talked about a lot of expensive things, we've talked about some cheaper alternatives.
Okay.
You love social media.
I do.
And we've talked about Facebook ads. Mm-hmm. But outside of Facebook ads, what about just social media in general?
I am a huge proponent of that, because I think that once you get a stronghold, that is one of the best ways to kind of engage your sphere. That's not an ad, because people don't want ads all the time, but I've got ads that just run nonstop forever and ever. Amen. But I also use like the LinkedIn for certain like demographics. I use Instagram heavy. Just to show to my sphere, like I'm out there working. I always use like the statement, I'm outside. So whether it's cold outside, raining, I'm always outside. I'm always working for you. I think if you utilize your social media correctly, it's a tool. People need to be reminded of that, that you have to see it consistently, whether it's Reels, whether it's TikTok, whether it's the posts, the stories. I told an agent last week that I think the stories and Reels are probably more effective than an actual post.
Interesting.
Because your posts might have 30, 40, 50 likes maybe. The other day I put up something like in a story, and I looked at the views, and it was like 347 views, and I'm like, that's a lot of eyes of people who don't generally just engage with you, but like you want them to see these things, and that's what I want. I want the impressions.
How long can a story be?
I think that if you're on Facebook's the shortest one. Like they cut you off after like a minute or something.
Gotcha.
But I think with Instagram, they let you stack it a little bit.
Interesting. Okay.
But I like Instagram.
You can stack the videos and the pictures in your stories on Facebook.
Yeah.
So they can be, you can get the attention a little bit longer by each when they swipe to the next or.
And I've also noticed that Instagram has better viewers, like have more viewers than Facebook. I think there are people who just have an Instagram account because they want to look at pictures and they look at the stories. Where Facebook, I feel like they're like, this is more engaging than I really want, and I don't want that.
It's easier to get through the stories on Instagram before going through all your posts.
Especially now that like Facebook, if you've noticed, they've changed it so they have like stories, but then they have like their like reels that they folded in, and so it's like, man, you got to like navigate back to the stuff. You're like, these are not people I know, so they're trying to get some more engagement by pulling reels from Instagram since they own them both. But you're right, I think it's easier for Instagram, and that's why I use it probably the most.
Interesting. Okay.
Then you also have, there's people that use Snapchat. There's people who use TikTok. I use LinkedIn as well. I'll post like articles. That's less entertainment, I think, but I'll post like our pros and cons, because you just got to think about the audience there. That's probably a guy or a gal at their office working, so they can't be like giggling and laughing all the time. But if they're looking at an informative video, that makes sense.
Gotcha. Anything else we need to do on Zillow leads?
Zillow leads, they're not bad. They're not great, right? So it's really just how much money you have. Be sure to calculate that. be familiar with your budget, familiar with your return on investment.
Yep.
Because that's really going to kind of dictate your own success.
Yeah, so what I would recommend in closing is that you pick 2 alternatives at least. Don't throw it all into Zillow. But if you wanted to try Zillow, maybe try the same amount of budget in something like realtorhomes.com and then compare. See how much you convert in either one and see is the conversion rate higher in Zillow. Because if it's not and you're spending a fifth of the money on something else and converting at the same rate, then you may want to shift that budget over and try to get more conversion. But if it does work, if you're in a great market, maybe your price point's awesome, maybe you're getting good leads, maybe you've gotten into Flex, keep killing it. If you have any questions on how to set up marketing, on how to set up CRMs, on training, anything like that, if you're looking for someone to partner with, we're doing trainings every week live, every single week, multiple a week technically. We do 1 call every 2 weeks, 1 call every Monday. If you'd like to get into our training calls, feel free to reach out to us. Again, you can get me at jared@centralvarealty.com. Instagram is _ the Davis Group, and you can reach Galen by
Galen at centralvarealty.com or your realtor's favorite realtor, RVA.
That is it. This is another episode of Mega Real Estate Talk. Thank you for watching. We'll see you later.
If you have a real estate question that you would like to ask Jared or Galen, reach out to them at jared@centralvarealty.com or Galen at centralvarealty.com. Who knows? It may even be featured on an upcoming episode.